So, these are the 4 reasons that I love self-storage. The first one is cash flow. In a multifamily property, the average operating expense ratio each month is about 35 to 55%. In self-storage, we're talking an operating cost ratio of between 15 and 30%. 35 to 55% operating cost margin, not including debt service for multifamily. 15 to 30% for self-storage operating cost margin. That means that out of every dollar you make with those properties, multifamily versus self-storage, you're going to get between 10 to 15 to 20% greater profit margin. Again, not including debt service because that's a huge variable. It all depends on how you buy your deal. You're going to get 10 to 15 to 20% more cash flow every single month applying a self-storage property than a multifamily property. That's for a number of reasons, including your churn costs. But in general, self-storage just has much, much lower operating costs than multifamily property does. It's more profit back in your pocket every single month. Next thing I love about self-storage is the consistency. Every business in the world has ups and downs. It has cycles. It has different times when it's good, different times when it's bad. When we first started buying self-storage over any other asset class in real estate, we wanted to find something that was going to be consistent even in the down times. There's a statistic put out by the Inside Self-Storage Association, the world's leader in self-storage information, that says in 2008 and 2009, which have some considered to be the worst years of the recession, self-storage actually performed better than it did in the boom years prior and in the boom years after. When somebody downsizes their business, they no longer can afford their office space, they don't need as many employees, they've got a ton of inventory they've got nothing to do with. They're not going to use a big office anymore, right? If you were a business owner in 2008 and 2009, you probably had some of the same experience. You worked out of your house, you cut costs, whatever it was. And if you did use a storage unit, you probably found that it cost you only about 30% as much to rent a storage unit as it did your office space. Even completely equivalent square footage. If you had 500 extra spare feet of office space and you rented 500 square foot storage unit, you would have only spent about 30% as much to have that storage unit, to keep your inventory there, to keep your furniture there. Whatever it was, you can re-expand after the downturn of the recession goes through. It's the same with households. If you're moving in with your friends or family, or you're consolidating households, you want to be able to afford to pay a $1,500, $2,000, $4,000 mortgage. Depending on where you live, you may not be able to pay that every month. You can certainly afford a $100 or $200, $300 storage unit to keep all the things that you've so carefully acquired over the years and have them ready for when you move into your new house again after the recession passes. So, consistency. The second reason why I absolutely love self-storage. The third reason I love self-storage, something we touched on briefly a minute ago, churn costs. When you turn a unit into a multifamily property, you got to think about the carpet, you got to think about the paint, you got to think about a number of things you got to replace and repair and make pretty for the new tenant. You could be talking about a cost, depending on how big the unit is and how much damage your tenant has caused, of $500 to $1,000 or more. Completely depends on the tenant, completely depends on your property. When I churn a self-storage unit, I can churn that unit for $20, $25 maximum. The reason that I compare so much to multifamily is for the fourth reason here. Combined income, number of units. Why do I compare so much to multifamily? Well, if you're looking at a number of real estate asset classes, like retail or office space or single family, if you lose a tenant, you're losing between 30 to 50 to 100% of your income that month. Your income could be completely gone. And if for some reason somebody moves out of your single-family house, or you own a single-tenant commercial building, a retail space of some kind, and your tenant moves out, you're going to become screwed. You're completely done that month. However, in a multifamily or a storage building, you've got dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, if you're talking about a very large storage facility, paying your rent, paying your expenses for you every month. Even if you have some kind of cataclysmic event, a tornado comes to your property, wipes out half of it, you're still going to be okay in the self-storage property, maybe not in the multifamily property, because again, your operating cost margin is so much higher. Your break even has to be so much higher, but a storage property, you're going to be okay. So, the combined income number of units that go into a storage property are the fourth reason that I love storage as an investment. And that's also the reason I'm going to be comparing so much to multifamily during this presentation, because the income model is very similar. You've got many tenants in one property with a self-storage or a multifamily property versus something like triple net commercial or single family, which is just one or two or three tenants.